I thought I'd just get a few questions going with Sara, a little discussion, and then open it up to you before we talk. And I thought actually we'd start a little bit far back before we even get to the film, because there are some people who doubtlessly want to know how you came into the film industry to begin with. You grew up in suburban New Jersey. Yeah? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about just your point of entry into the film business, how you went to college, etc.
Actually, I was interested in life is working. I was interested in there's a button.
There we go.
Technology today. I was interested in theater. I grew up in New Jersey, but I spent a lot of time coming into New York, going to the theater. My mother was very big on me learning French, so she would drop me off at the cinema to see new wave French cinema. And I came to New York and I wanted to work in theater, I thought. And I then became very disillusioned by the proscenium and started thinking about moving in. And I had written a play about Zelda Fitzgerald, Scott Fitzgerald's wife. And people kept saying, that's really cinematic. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And then I ended up going to NYU graduate film school and studying film there and meeting a lot of my colleagues there. And it was during the punk period in New York City, when it was sort of like anybody could pick up a guitar and be a musician, and anybody could pick up a camera and be a filmmaker. So that's how, and I never thought of it as entering the film industry. I thought about it as telling stories and making films.
Paul Bowles was an incredibly interesting an avant-garde figure. He was a contemporary of Aaron Copland. Actually, he studied with Copland. He was, of course, a writer and a musician. He translated the works of Sartre and Borges. He produced music for William Saroyan and Tennessee Williams. And this feeling of being an avant-garde writer during the period of the avant-garde really, I think, comes through in a lot of his work. How did you come to Bowles, and how did you come to this story of Bowles, which, by the way, is part of a collection that Gore Vidal called one of the great American short story collections of all time. How did you come to appreciate Bowles and what he was doing, and why this particular story?
Well, I was living in downtown New York, and you'd see William Burroughs walking on the street, and he'd wear a three-piece suit, and he would have a cane, but you knew his cane was really a dagger, and he'd have a derringer in his belt, and he looked like somebody's proper grandfather, but you knew that, you know, William Burroughs was someone special. And Allen Ginsberg and Robert Frank, and I lived in the neighborhood where you'd see all these characters, and Burroughs and Bowles were good friends, and I think when I first started reading Paul Bowles, you couldn't even get his books in America. I'd have to go to a special bookstore in order to get his books that were published in England. And then this press called Black Sparrow Press came out with his collected works. And I read this story. It was a 7-page story. I read it, and I was so dumbfounded by the end of it that I was just like, and I have to make this into a movie. It just sort of hit me over the head. And I made the film without the rights to it. And through William Burroughs, because I had a friend, Howard Berkner, who was making a documentary about Burroughs with Jim Jarmusch. And through them, I got Paul Bowles' address, and I wrote him in Tangier. He was living in Morocco. And I told him I'd made this movie, and he said, well, I can't really give you the rights. You have to go to William Morris, which is a very big agency in New York. And I was nervous, and I went to William Morris, and they said, it's a good thing you made the movie first, because now we like the movie, and we wouldn't have given you the rights if you hadn't made the movie first. So I took a big risk, and then Paul Bowles and I started to correspond with one another. I was recently at a Brian Geisen exhibit, who was also a colleague of Burroughs, and introduced him to his collage technique of writing. And Burroughs said there were, they don't make them like it anymore, like Genet, Jean Genet, Beckett, Bowles, and Brian Geisen. And he considered Bowles one of the great intellectuals and great creative artists. I don't know, I was very moved by Paul Bowles' writings, and I'm a little, this copy that you saw was not the one that was intended to be projected tonight, so it should have been a little sharper and a little more crisp, but I hope you guys enjoyed it regardless of that.
Well, actually, since you're on the subject of the copy, the film itself was sort of lost. It's ironic the way in which you found a print to be able to achieve a whole story.
Yeah, there was a restoration that was done, and this wasn't this, unfortunately. But I did. Early this summer, all the materials were lost out of our storage facility. All the original negative, everything. And I had one war-torn film festival print, which I made a 1-inch copy from. And then I got a call early this summer from Paul Bowles' archivist, and they said, we found a pristine print of the film in his house in Tangiers. And it's remarkable that it's in such good condition because Paul Bowles smoked a lot of keef. And keef leaves a huge residue on everything. And there was bug powder over everything as well. And they sealed up his house for over 1 year and in Tangier. So the film had been sitting in a very bad environment for film material. And Paul, I had totally forgotten that I had sent a print to Paul Bowles in 1982 with a filmmaker friend of mine who projected it for Bowles. I really wanted him to see the film. And then he wrote me his critique of the film. And apparently Paul really liked the film and really treasured it and kept it in a really special place in his house. And Paul Bowles was a composer, and he really loved the music in the film. And the film was done, the music in this film was done by a composer named Phil Quine, who's actually become quite well known. He does a phenomenal piece called Unsilent Night around Christmas time, where he brings out about 1,000 boom boxes and gives people different tapes, and everybody walks through the streets and they echo. It's fantastic. You walk through New York and it's echoing these incredible musical sounds in this parade of people. That was who did the music there. Also, Nan Golden is in the film, the photographer. She plays one of the accident victims. And Luc Sant, who's a very well-known writer now.
And actually, the two of you did you and your partner, Jim Jarmusch, did almost everything else on the film. I think Jim wrote the script, did he not?
We co-wrote it.
You co-wrote the script together, and you co-produced it?
No, I produced it.
You produced it entirely. Why don't you go through the sort of crew responsibilities for the two of you, because it was something that you did really as an act of will.
Yeah, we didn't have any money. We just had a lot of faith. I had produced Permanent Vacation for Jim in 1979, and then in 80, I found this story, and then Jim and I turned it into a 12-page screenplay, and then it took me 1.5 years or more to make the film because I had to keep stopping and working in order to get the money, and I produced the film. Jim shot the film. He was my cameraman. I had a very clear image. It's amazing when you write something and all of a sudden it tells you how to shoot it. And Jim followed, how I wanted to shoot it. And we were, a very small crew, and we shot it in 6 days. And I got the car accident cost me $150. And I did that because I bought each car for $50, and then the car people brought the wrecked cars that were already wrecked to where the firemen had a special training school. And then the firemen were really happy to blow up these cars. So I brought a couple kegs of beer, and then they drank the beer, and then we blew up the cars, and then I got a call that night from the ambulance company who are all the brothers of the firemen, and they said, we want to be in the movie too. And so I wrote a scene for them. And then they came, and then all the firemen were pissed off that their brothers were now in the movie. And then I had to have my picture taken with all the firemen and all the ambulance workers, and it was a really great imagery, a great way to make a film. We really felt, we were really a little family. We were all sleeping in one place, and you know, in my parents' home, and it was a very, and I made food for 6 days in advance, so every morning I would take out something with defrost, so we'd have dinner that night, and we did it on a very low budget and in a great way.
Well,